Jordan Peterson speaking about marriage and the reasons why you should stay in a marriage, even though things might be very difficult. Listen, he's got some wise words to share. I'd like to share afterwards some Jewish ideas based on the Torah, based on Kabbalistic, mystical, Hasidic teachings, that I think give a different angle and a twist on things that I think you'll enjoy. Listen in.
That's actually why people get married, just so you know. Because this is built into marital vows. I'm not leaving, ever, no matter what. It's like, okay, well, that definitely puts a boundary around our arguments, right? Because I can't say every time you manifest one of your flaws, which you're likely to do just as often as me, well, enough of this. It's like, that's horrible, man. If your whole life is, well, every time you get out of line, I'm out of here. It's like, how the hell are you? First of all, you're not going to admit to ever doing anything wrong. Second, you're going to be on your, you're like a scared cat the entire relationship because, well, who knows, it could just come to an end at any moment. It's like, people say, well, if the possibility of divorce is open, it makes you free. It's like, yeah, that's what you want. You want to be free, eh? Really? Really? So you can't predict anything. That's what you're after. It's a vow. And it says, look, I know that you're trouble. Me too. So we won't leave, no matter what happens. Well, that's a hell of a vow, but that's why it's a vow, right? That's why you take it in front of a bunch of people. That's why it's supposed to be a sacred act. It's like, what's the alternative? What's the alternative? Everything is mutable and changeable at any moment. Well, go ahead, you live your life like that and see what you're like when you're 50. Jesus, it's dismal. 2 or 3 divorces, your family's fragmented, you've got no continuity of narrative. And it's not good for the kids, not by any stretch of the imagination. And so it's a form of voluntary enslavement, I suppose, but it's also equivalent to the adoption of a responsibility. And there's more to it than that. If you can't run away, then you can solve your problems. Because it might be, okay, well, I'm stuck with you. So how about we fix things? Because the alternative is we're going to be in a boxing match for the next 40 years. That's the alternative. So, and you think you're going to fix problems without something like that hanging over your head? There isn't a chance. You'll just avoid them because that's what people do. It's really hard to solve problems, especially in a relationship. We're having a fight and I find out that it's, because you were abused by your uncle when you were 5 or some goddamn thing. It's like, it's very frequent that that sort of thing happens. There's your partner is manifesting some weird anomalous behavior. You just can't make heads or tails of it. It doesn't seem related to what you're doing at all. They don't want to talk about it. And so as soon as you bring it up, they get mad. And then you bring it up again, they even get madder and they tell you that you're not going to talk about that or they're going to leave. And so maybe you're really, really persistent because you're kind of a son of a bitch, and then they break down and cry, and then they have this horrible memory that comes flooding forward that's completely, you don't know what to do with it, and then you have to sort it out. It's like, you think you're going to do that unless there's a good reason? You have to know, we better sort this out or we're going to be carrying it around for the next 40 years. That maybe is enough motivation so you'll actually try hard to solve a problem. It's a lot easier to say, well, sorry, we're not going there. But then, good, you'll have it every day, every goddamn day for the rest of your life. See, there's some additional problems with divorce that people don't really grasp when they're young. Like the idea that you can be divorced once you have children, that's kind of a stupid idea, because you can't. You can find a limited substitute for your initial freedom. But if you have kids and you try to get divorced, the probability that that's going to demolish your life is very, very high. First of all, it's incredibly expensive. So one or both of you is going to come out of that poor. And your market value has declined. Let's say you're the woman who takes the kids. Your market value has declined radically. You're going to be poorer. The man, he's just as screwed because he is now an indentured servant and there's no escape from it. So it's not so bad if you can negotiate a peaceful separation, and some people can, but lots of times if you have a terrible relationship, it's not like negotiating a peaceful separation is all that easy. But if you're at each other's throats, good luck to you. I think it's roughly equivalent to having non-fatal cancer. It is not pleasant. It's a 10-year process, 15-year process. It'll cost you $250,000, and it'll tear a big chunk out of your life. And also, it will really disrupt your relationship with your kids. And you know, you bring kids into a step-parent family, they do not do as well. Step-parents are not as good parents as biological parents, and the data on that is clear. Now, obviously, there are exceptions, because there are terrible biological parents, and there are wonderful step-parents. But if you look in aggregate, it's not that easy to care for children. You need everything you can binding you to them. And if they're someone else's children, mostly they get in the way of the person that you love, right? Well, if let's say you have a child, I'll be right out. Let's say you have a child and I want to go out with you. Every second you spend with that child is the second you don't spend with me. And there's going to be a price for that. I'm not going to be happy about that. And if I have a child, you're going to feel exactly the same way. You might say, well, no, I love children. It's like, yeah, sure you do. I doubt it. You might love your child. And you know, it's pretty specific the way that people love children. So, and the rate of abuse for kids in step-parent families is way higher than it is in biological families. There's not even any comparison.
So he gave many reasonable reasons, logical reasons why you should stay in a marriage and try to work it out, which no doubt there's good reason for it. But let's get to the fundamentals of marriage and maybe how we can look at marriage to begin with. And looking at it this way, maybe will help create the proper foundation for the marriage, that whatever difficulties you have, they'll be easier to deal with and to get through the rough patch and make things good again. One is, marriage isn't a good idea. It's a godly idea. Marriage is about two halves of one soul reuniting and coming back to be bound with each other. Two halves of a soul that were in heaven above, came down into this world to be clothed in a body, into a being, and living a life. And then marriage means a reunion of two halves of a soul. So when we say that it's a match made in heaven, it's literally the match was already in heaven. And now it's just playing itself out down in this world. So when you look at your spouse in such a manner, a match made in heaven doesn't mean it won't be hell on earth. It just means in heaven it was made. It's meant to work and play itself out and develop into something here on earth. If you're married, it'll be relatively a peaceful one and a healthy one. How can you ensure, or I don't know, ensure is the right word, but make more probable that it'll be a good union between man and woman, husband and wife? Well, let's take the very words in Hebrew. Ish is man in Hebrew. Isha is woman in Hebrew. Both are spelled with an aleph and a shin. And the difference is a yud and a hey, which is actually God's name. In the man and the woman, there is the presence of God. When they're united together, man and woman, there's a union. They get married, and there's the presence of God in that marriage, meaning not just a commitment to each other, but a commitment to God to make this marriage work. And you have the yud from the man and the hey from the woman, which spells the name one of the names of God in that relationship. If you take out the yud and the hey, each word spells the word Aish. Aish means fire. You have a double fire. If there's no sense of something greater than myself that I'm committed to, that this is a godly union and not just merely a human convention, then it's likely a more likelihood to fail. Now, that doesn't mean that if you believe in God and are committed to God, then, there can be divorce, but it'll be a less likely chance of a divorce because there's a greater commitment than just to oneself. If the marriage is all about what I get from it, well, if I'm not getting from it what I was hoping and planning to, then I'm out of it. But if the marriage is a divine institution, and therefore there's a commitment to God, and therefore it's not not merely what I get from it. Ultimately, it's what I give to this union, to this marriage. Then I'll look at myself and see how I could make it better. And if each partner does that, guess what? Most likely it will get better, and it will only be strengthened. Even through difficulties, it will be strengthened. This is the Jewish way. And with this kind of mindset, I suggest that that's how we should look when we are married and we're looking to be married. Yes, find the one that is most suitable. But once you get married, it's a commitment that's beyond what I'm gaining from the person. There's something greater where the sum total of 1 + 1 in the end equals 1.